So, you want me to tell you a story? In the heart of a narrow alley known as Father's Path, a cobbled side street in the southern quarter of the city, stood the broken cards market. The name Father's Path dated back to a local legend. Many years ago, a wandering father had shielded the city's children during a raid by bandits. He stood at the end of this very alley, holding off the attackers with nothing but a garden rake and courage. At one point, he had sent a bouncing crooked wheeled cart at the attackers. The townsfolk named the alley in his honour, and the story became as much a part of the city as its stones. The market tavern, called the Dancing Cart by locals, was named for the painted sign that hung above its wide wooden doors. On it was a cheerful scene of children. In fact, the original sign had displayed a brother, a sister, and their grandmother dancing around a cart filled with red apples, yellow cheese, and blue flowers. But this was the modern sign. The colours had faded with time, but the happiness in the image remained. Inside the tavern, Mikester sat with his back to the wall. He was a slim figure, with a beard and brown curly hair, and a relaxed face with happy eyes. His light leather jacket was travel-stained, and a green shirt clung to his shoulders. He wore tight-fitting trousers and warm shoes, perfect for fast movement. Under his shirt, across his chest, was slung a looped chain that held his most prized possession, the amulet of the deep star. It was a glowing blue stone that pulsed faintly with hidden power. He sipped from a tankard of warm cider as sunlight filtered in through the cracked windows. Around him, the room buzzed with life. Teachers, students, and farmers sharing tales, eating bread and chicken, drinking water, and enjoying the brief peace of the day. A mother sat nearby, reading to her children, who were tired but happy after playing in the park. A stocky old dwarf leaned on the bar beside him, a pipe in his hand and a cigar between his teeth. "Hello, stranger," the dwarf said, his voice rough like gravel. "Ever had trouble with the police officer around here?" Mixter raised an eyebrow. "Not yet, but I don't think I'd be their favorite person." The dwarf chuckled. "Well, the police officer here isn't bad, as long as you don't do anything too exciting." Mixter flipped a coin and stated, "Excitement is my specialty." Mixter gave a half smile. "Goodbye, friend." Excitement was his specialty, and lately he needed it. His coin purse was nearly empty. Just one battered silver piece clinked at the bottom. His last job had ended poorly, and the trip through the twilight pine mountains had been harder than expected. He'd arrived in the city just after sunrise, cold and sad, after slipping down forested slopes and crossing icy streams. He'd seen lions and a lone dog watching him from afar, a fish swimming in the river, and drank from the icy water, nearly freezing his hand in the process. The weather had been rainy and windy, making the journey tougher. That day before visiting the market, he'd stopped by the merchant district. The town was famous for its bustling bazaar known as the Web Circle, a place legendary for selling all things connected to the internet. Not that Mixter cared about the latest trend, but among the magical gadgets he'd found a forgotten stall selling weapons. That's where he'd bought the Emberfang blade, a short sword with a glowing red edge, hot to the touch even in winter air. The strange, wizened old salesman, who rode a bicycle to the stall, threw in the blue amulet as an extra incentive. The salesman had said, "This sword is for fighting demons, and the amulet, well, you will know when the time is right to use it." As he thought about it, the doors creaked open. A man stepped in, tall, pale, wearing a low tilted hat and a black cloak embroidered with golden thread in the shape of a rising sun. His boots were polished, his gloves stitched from lion leather, and a small camera hung around his neck. The stranger walked straight to Mikester. His voice was smooth, like silk. "Hello, you're the one they call Magster?" "That depends who's asking," Mikester replied, not moving his foot from the ember-fang blade beneath the table. "I am Fallon," the man said. "I offer you a job. Payment 20 gold coins, plus 5 more if you succeed today." Mikester blinked. "Go on." In the far cliffs beyond the park, past the twisted trees and a sandy beach, lies a place called the Wormspire Tower. It is filled with dark magic. Within you will find a terrible monster, Grimhow, the Smoke Wraith, and worse still, the guardian of the tower, Malgaroth, the Bone Priest. He serves no king, no god, only his own hunger. Mikester raised an eyebrow. "What's in the tower?" "A treasure," Fallon whispered, leaning close. "The Whispering Mirror. It is decorated with the symbol of a doctor, a serpent twisted around a silver rod. Bring it to me, and the coins are yours." Mikester considered. "Why not fetch it yourself?" "I'm a messenger," Fallon said, angry at the question. "Not a hero." Mikester smirked. "Fair enough. You've got yourself a deal." The next evening, Mikester crept into the blackened arch of the Wormspire Tower. The halls twisted like a maze. He passed a cracked television, its screen flickering with ghost light. In the next room, a computer hissed, its keys tapped by no one. Mikester drew his sword and moved left, then right to avoid traps. Down a stairwell, he entered a room lined with phones, not ringing, just silent. When he stepped forward, blades burst from the walls. He dived left, then rolled right, and charged straight ahead to escape. Another room glowed with eerie paintings, faces of long-dead kings that watched him with angry eyes. In one corner he found a tiny mirror wrapped in red cloth. Treasure. He slipped it into his jacket, his hand brushing the amulet. The next chamber echoed with music. A spectral chef and farmer danced, their clothes stitched with glowing symbols. A ghostly cat and bird swirled around them. Mikester ducked their ghostly grasps and sprinted past desks, knocking over books and a pencil, dodging floating pens. He ran fast, his heart pounding, his eyes looking for danger. Finally, he reached a great bronze door engraved with a sun, the sun blazing in arcs across the surface. Inside stood Malgaroth, tall and dressed in light colour robes, his mouth twisted into a grin. "You dare come here?" Malgaroth hissed. "You are nothing." "I'm a little something," Meixter said, standing tall despite the pain in his head from the tower's oppressive air. Malgoroth raised both hands. From the floor black smoke swirled and rose. A form emerged. Red eyes, swirling mist, grim howl. "You will be torn apart," Malgoroth growled. by my wraith. Somehow, Meister had by now had the urge to bring out his amulet. He had obtained it from under his shirt. Grimhow struck fast. Meister dodged up, then ducked down as claws ripped the air. The room grew cold, and he could barely breathe. Then the amulet of the deep star glowed bright. Meister raised it, and it flashed blue fire. Grimhowl shrieked, twisting, burning in magical flame, and vanished. Malgoroth roared. Meister charged at Malgoroth with his own two blades versus a great sorcerer. Already drawn was the Emberfang blade, which hissed with heat. "You're finished, Boneface!" exclaimed Meister. Meister lunged. They clashed. Meister took a hit to his foot, but spun and struck back, slicing through Malgoroth's golden threads and ash hands. Malgoroth's right hand fell to the floor, and the other hand bled. "You fight like a fish with a sword," Malgoroth sneered. "You talk like a bird with no beak." Meister shot back and drove the blade home. Malgoroth collapsed. The tower seemed to sigh. Meister returned to the broken cart market before dawn. Dallin was waiting outside a house beside a school where children were singing and were painting flowers on a wall. "You did it?" Dallin asked. Meister tossed him the whispering mirror. "Try not to get yourself cursed. Goodbye." Dallin grinned and handed over a bag of coins. "The city owes you thanks, hero. That was a risk few would take." Meister nodded. "Yes, but someone had to do it." With the gold in his pouch and the sun rising behind him and cheese in his belly, Meister left the city by father's path. He passed children swimming in a river, the smell of fresh bread filling the air. A car and a bus rumbled by, and a plane soared overhead. He walked alone towards the twilight pine mountains, where trees whispered and the wind carried tales of new adventures waiting to begin.